Now that the fall is upon us and we say goodbye to another fun-filled summer of warmth, sunshine, and good times, we recall the memories made by spending a day at the shore. Whether boating, swimming, or just sticking your toes in the sand, a cool breeze and a quick dip in the lake is a great way to cool off and just let nature wash over you. And while you never anticipate anything could come along and spoil that, we nonetheless remain vigilant and guarded in those surroundings. And with good reason, because there are unforeseeable circumstances that can take an otherwise pleasant day and turn it into a complete nightmare. There is one such place that's had more than its share of happiness and tragedy, and it's earned a reputation as the deadliest lake in the country, and the reasons are both perplexing and extremely strange. Lake Lanier is the largest lake in the state of Georgia. Somewhere in the vicinity of 10 million people a year visit its shores for swimming, boating, and jet skiing. In fact, the northern part of the lake was used for rowing and sprint canoeing events during the 1996 Summer Olympics. There are a great number of city parks spread around its 680 miles of shoreline, and most have amenities like picnic areas, restrooms, boat ramps, and playgrounds. There are also dozens of beaches on Lake Lanier, situated on islands located throughout. Each year, from mid-November through January, the islands are decorated with over 6 miles of Christmas lights, the largest animated light show in the southeast and one of the largest in the world. While the lake is a community and vacationer's paradise, it does have a darker side, as it has a well-earned reputation as one of the deadliest bodies of water in the entire country. Since it was created by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1950 to be filled by the Beaufort Dam as a means of flood control of the Chattahoochee River, a water source for Atlanta, and hydroelectric usage, the lake has claimed more than 700 lives, 27 of whose bodies have never been recovered. Drownings and boating accidents account for a majority of these incidents, many of which involving members of the Latinx population, to whom the lake remains a very popular recreation spot. And the reason for so many deaths may actually lurk beneath its surface, as rubble left behind from its construction and scattered debris left by past visitors creates a field of treacherous navigation. But existing obstacles alone might not be the sole explanation for the high body count, because Lake Lanier is reputedly haunted. The tragic events in and around Lake Lanier date back before its very existence. Forsyth County, on its westernmost edge, was once home to members of the Cherokee Nation until the 1830s, when the U.S. government expelled a vast number of its 16,000 members to various reservations during the Trail of Tears campaign. The discovery of gold in the region in 1829 also fueled settlers' desires to inhabit the area. But that would not be the last time a resident community would be expelled from the county. In the early 1900s, over 1,000 members of the African American community owned land and ran businesses there, and it was called the Black Wall Street in some circles. But beginning on September 9, 1912, all that would change. An 18-year-old young white woman named May Crow was brutally raped and murdered in the village of Oscarville, near Brown's Bridge on the Chattahoochee River. 4 young black people were accused of the crime: 16-year-old Ernest Knox and his 18-year-old cousin Oscar Daniel, 22-year-old Trussie Daniel, Oscar's sister, and 24-year-old Robert Edwards, who was hung one day after his arrest by a white mob that descended upon the jail he was held in. The violence increased as homes, churches, and businesses were set afire by night riders demanding all residents abandon their homes, with only 24 of the county's black landowners given the option to sell their property, and even then at a fraction of its true value. The terror campaign was successful, as residents hastily fled, leaving much of their belongings behind, which were pillaged by marauding mobs of their tormentors. Knox and Daniel were eventually convicted and hung in front of 5,000 witnesses, while Trussey's charges were dismissed. It is generally thought that all three were actually innocent of the crime. When Lake Lanier was created in the 50s, it basically came at the cost of the families who had since taken up residence there. The government acquired 50,000 acres of farmland, displaced anywhere between 250 to 700 families, and closed down 15 businesses, including post offices and the beloved Looper racetrack. They also relocated those who had been buried in 20 cemeteries, or more accurately, claimed to have done so. The Army Corps of Engineers had insisted no graves remain there, but Native American burial grounds and the graves of black slaves were never clearly marked, and things like ground-penetrating radar were decades away from their inception. As a result of the haphazard evacuation, beneath the waters remained structures, roads, and buildings that were basically flooded over when the lake was established. In essence, an underwater ghost town currently exists there. Headstones and graves are still clearly visible to divers, despite the assertions that all were removed, and that those residual structures remaining need not cause any concern. As the waters continue to recede, the amount of accidents increase, at current time reaching as many as 500. Some of those remain of mysterious origin, such as boats exploding and bursting into flames. Droughts bring the worst of conditions as a ghastly mix of boats, cars, and sometimes bodies mingle in close proximity to boaters and swimmers, at times eerily dragging both to their untimely end. Searches for drowning victims is perilous, and often futile, as navigating the lake floor is chaotic. This, coupled with quickly varying water depths, make recovery missions even more dangerous. As a result, it's not unusual for a recreational diver to come upon a lifeless body during an underwater expedition. One local diver is on the record as saying,
"You reach out into the dark and you feel an arm or a leg, and it doesn't move. That's creepy. Nobody has been able to lay them to rest. They're at the bottom of Lanier. Hopefully you find them before they find you."
The most notorious of the hauntings has its origins in April of 1958, when Delia Mae Parker Young, a worker at the Riverside Military Academy, and her friend Susie Roberts were driving to the North Georgia Roadhouse for a night of fun and dancing. They stopped at a local gas station to fuel up, and then reportedly drove off without paying. Crossing the Lake Lanier Bridge, Susie somehow lost control of the car they were riding in, and the vehicle plummeted off the bridge, coming to rest at the bottom of the lake, wedged between two tree trunks and a small hill. Divers could not recover the bodies, with the only remnants of the tragedy being a set of skid marks left on the road that ended at the bridge's edge. It would be a year later when a fisherman came upon the floating remains of a woman near a bridge. The body was missing both hands and multiple toes, and because of its advanced decomposition, it couldn't be positively identified as either of the young women. Then in 1990, 32 years after the incident, the Ford sedan they were riding in was discovered at the bottom of the lake during dredging operations. Inside were the remains of Susie Roberts, meaning the body found in 1959 was that of Delia Young. It was known that Delia was wearing a blue dress she had borrowed from Susie the night of the accident, and over the years since the mishap, multitudes of people have reported seeing a woman wearing a dress of that same color wandering on or near the bridge. More disturbingly, they claim she is missing both hands. The apparition has been dubbed the Lady of the Lake. There have also been several reports of a shadowy figure sitting aboard a raft, holding a long push pole to steer the raft as it drifts forward and back and from side to side. The figure is holding a lantern to light the darkness. One reported sighting was made by two fishermen who were out on the lake at around 1 a.m. on a cold October night. They saw the raft in roughly 45 feet of water, yet the pilot was nonetheless using a pole to push himself and the vessel along. The men watched in curiosity as the raft floated along before its rider abruptly screamed out and jumped into the icy waters. The stunned fishermen pulled up their lines and hastened to leave the area, but one final glance across the water with the aid of their flashlights revealed no sign of the raft or its passenger, with the surface of the lake appearing calm and serene. The gamut of supernatural activities include visitors, staff, and lake officials reporting the sounds of disembodied footsteps and voices in more remote areas. Strange light anomalies and swimmers claiming to feel icy hands attempting to drag them into the depths is also a common claim. Vehicles have been known to swerve in the opposite direction of their turning wheels. Then there is the story of Johnny Callahan, a construction worker who was killed by falling rocks, leaving behind a wife and 6 children. His full-bodied spirit has been spotted walking the shoreline with a gash on his head that can be plainly seen. Those who approach him to offer assistance have looked on in terror as he simply fades before their eyes. Another of the more notable ghosts associated with the lake is that of a young boy who drowned there some years ago. His spirit is said to still haunt the area as he walks along the shore, with some insisting they have heard his cries for help echoing across the water. Some visitors have reported seeing ghostly apparitions under the water, while others claim to hear church bells, though the spire of an old church that once housed the bells was removed during the lake's excavation. There have been multiple reports of boats capsizing after colliding with something in the water, yet when the area is searched, nothing that could have been responsible for the accident can be found. Other boaters have spoken of rogue waves large enough to capsize a boat, appearing out of nowhere, then just as suddenly vanishing. There is no shortage of potential perpetrators of the hauntings. Perhaps it's the restless spirits of those who remain in their watery graves, abandoned there for all eternity, including Native Americans and African Americans whose surviving descendants were driven from the land. Or possibly the 27 souls who have never been recovered from its depths, who still roam the locale of their deaths. The lake seemingly has no discernment between celebrity and common man, as was the case of 11-year-old Kyle Glover, the stepson of R&B legend Usher, who died of injuries suffered when an inner tube he was on was struck by a jet ski in 2012. The remnants of structures, along with decreasing water levels, are recognized as a major contributing factor in the elevated number of deaths that take place each year at Lake Lanier, taking hold of swimmers and dragging them under, or damaging boats with debris. As a result of the loss of lives, parameters have been set for visitors. People diving there are asked only to do so in designated areas and in partners. And swimmers are asked to wear life jackets, as the undertow caused by the dam can be especially hazardous. In 2023 alone, Lake Lanier has claimed 8 lives, and it's estimated that between 10 and 20 deaths occur there on average every year. There are also rumors that the lake is cursed, which many believe stems from the controversial circumstances surrounding its construction, particularly the intrusion on African American and indigenous people who were laid to rest there. And while it must be assumed that man-made hazards are responsible for most of them, one can't help but wonder if there's something more sinister and mysterious churning in the depths below its otherwise unruffled surface.